Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of motherhood, of parenthood to raise us. Different to how we were raised, perhaps different to how we thought we would raise our children, maybe different to how society is telling us to raise our kids, just different. I'm your host, Anya Simmons, so welcome. I am a trained British nanny, a mum of two adults now. I keep saying big people, adults really. Adults now, a yoga teacher, parenting coach, and an author. My book is coming out this summer called Parent from This Place, How Yoga Changed the Way I Parent. So I'm super excited to welcome our first guest today. Her name is Natasha Pepperl, and she's a foster care advocate, founder of Just As Special, and also has a podcast of the same name, Just As Special. So welcome, Natasha, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful. So we'll start off with that first question. Who are you and who are you mothering?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I am the proud daughter of an Iranian political refugee, which I'm really proud of. And it was sort of the catalyst too for me starting the podcast Just As Special. My sister co-hosts it with me. Just growing up in a biracial household and coming to terms with the fact that each family is its own culture, which I see a lot in foster care as a foster mom myself. And we're just really focused on
Hello.
so, sorry, my cat just bombed our Zoom. Okay.
Perfect.
A little bit of real life and working from home during COVID, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but we're really focused on sharing about foster care from diverse perspectives as we weren't seeing that happening. So, like you said, we have the podcast where we invite different guests on that talk about from a variety of their own perspectives about foster care. And we also have an online training portal for foster parents where they can earn mandatory training hours. And also, we have a resource database that we're working on building out as well. That just has resources for people interested in getting involved in foster care, people who are already foster care families, or people looking to volunteer or donate. And so I just finished being a foster mom for 9 months to a teen girl. And as happens oftentimes in foster care, right? There's periods where there's no kid in your home. So right now we don't have any kids in our home, but we also do respite care, which means short-term foster care as well. So sometimes kids come for up to a week at a time to give their foster families a break, or if they have an emergency they have to deal with.
Wow. So a lot of support. You're sort of right in the center of support for yourself, for the for kids, I guess, different ages that you get, and then also for the whole system. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And actually, in talking, when you mentioned with your parents and growing up, are there areas from your childhood that you really want to be able to have in your own home, like to help the children that you take care of?
Yes, there are. Yeah. So my dad's American, my mom's from Iran. So there was like a big culture clash sort of in our home. But what was cool is they kind of took different parts from each culture and then sort of stuck them together. So I had a very untraditional childhood, I would say, and way of being raised. But some positives from that were that I felt like my parents really raised my siblings and I to be really non-judgmental of other people. So, we would sometimes like feed homeless people in our community, stuff like that. And, it never was like, oh, they're below us. It's just like, they have a different set of circumstances in life. And, it's our role, if we have more to help. So, yeah. And I have a lot of memories of my mom just like giving meals to people in the community if they were like sick or had a new baby, something like that. So, yeah, they just always kind of emphasize that generosity piece. But there was also some difficulties too, for sure. There was like some abuse in our home. And I think especially my mom being an immigrant, she felt very isolated. My dad was in the military. They moved around a lot. So they didn't have a strong community at all times to help come around them. And so that's something that before I started the journey of becoming a foster parent, my partner and I were like, this is something we need, is we need a community, a strong community, because you can't do it alone successfully.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Those are really good attributes to bring in, to your parenting, but to other people parenting, right? That you're creating this community, and it's so true. I think as for myself as a mum, and I have moved to Canada, so I don't have any family here,
Mm.
and I didn't realize ahead of time how much that would have been of value especially when my kids were smaller. To have that full on support, and support that you can trust, right? And support that knows what it's like. My mum grew up is Swiss, from Switzerland, and grew up in England. I mean, we were raised in England, so she moved to England. So just meaning that, she would know what it's like to be in another country and raising
Mm-hmm.
your kids, right? Great.
Right, because it is a totally different experience, right, than raising your kids in your own culture. And I think it totally relates to foster parenting as well, because like I said before, right, like I just have this idea that every family is its own culture. And so there's a huge culture clash when a kid from another family is coming into your home. And so just
Right.
being able to respect that and acknowledge that, I think is just really vital.
Yeah, and I think the side that you said about being non-judgmental, having that as a core value, I mean, that changes the world. That changes the world with whoever comes through your home, right? Based on their circumstance, who they are, what their background is, all of those things. You're able to just see it as a child, right?
Right. And yeah, I think it so relates to foster parenting as well, because, the biological parents of that kid are, they're there, even if they're not there, right?
Right,
The kids
right.
talk about them,
Mm-hmm.
of course they want to be with them, most of the
Right.
time,
Yeah.
all of that. So, yeah, that's a huge piece too. And something that we try to emphasize on the podcast is it's so, so important to respect and honor those biological parents.
Right.
And, while towing the line of like, sometimes I have to say, like, they'll say like a kid in our home will say a memory with their parents. And if it's way out in left field and
Right.
they're not realizing it, I will sometimes say, that's not really healthy, or there's a reason that's illegal and people do go to jail for that, but I try to keep it pretty neutral.
Right.
Um, but there's many stories they tell where, it's just so evident how loving or creative or fun their parents were. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
important to be able to say, wow, that's awesome. That must have been so fun, you know.
Right.
So, in that memory, I can really tell that, your parent really cared for you or something like that. Because when some people might have the tendency to be like, these parents are all bad. No one's all good or all bad.
Mm. Yeah.
And when you're telling them that their parents are bad, you're telling them that they're bad, right? Because they're part of their parents.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of like also if there's like a really nasty divorce, right? And one person is like, that
Yeah.
parent is so bad.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
telling your kid that that part of you is horrible and I don't like that part
Mm.
of you. So yeah, it's just so important to be able to be positive and affirming of the positive things that these
Right.
parents,
Right.
do.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I'm thinking that um, chances are, I'll talk from my own experience. Chances are we've got a lot of shame and guilt anyway, right? And so then if somebody is like from my as a parent to my kids, say when my kids messed up or were messing up, you take it so personally, right? So I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine from a child's point of view, if their parents mess up, I'm putting it lightly because I don't really know the circumstance, they would carry that embarrassment and shame with them, right?
That is so true.
Right? Whereas my kids are not me, and their parents are not them, right? But you feel obliged to, or you feel embarrassed that you have to say, "Oh, this is what's happened," or this, and we want to
It is so
diffuse
true.
that, right?
No, it's so true. I'm so glad you bring this up. Actually, in our latest podcast episode, um, we were talking with a longtime marriage and family therapist who became a
Okay.
foster mom herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked a lot about the shame that these kids carry. And it is so heavy. And children see a lacking in their caregivers as a lacking in themselves. It's what I've heard. And that,
Yeah.
biologically, it makes sense too. A 5-year-old can't just be like, I don't like my mom. I'm going to go off in my own world. Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so they interpret a parent's anger, even if it's not logical or
100%. Yeah.
abusive, right, as something
Mm-hmm.
that they did wrong, because that gives them a reason to stay, because, you know, Otherwise, we
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be here as a species if every time a parent messed up, the kid just walked off, right? Or every time the parent wasn't the best, the kid walked off.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so true. That's definitely there.
Cool. Cool. And is there a parenting style that you relate to, like a particular? We talk about. Have I should actually ask first. Do you have you mostly fostered teens? Because that's obviously a bit different to little
Yes,
ones.
yes. So most of our experience has been with teenagers, and it's not that we set out to do that,
Right.
but we had a very wide age range, and both my partner and I work. So it was like school age was our age range, and
Right.
teens are in the most need of a home
Mm-hmm.
because most people don't want to do that for a variety of reasons.
Right.
So yeah, so it was teens and tweens have mostly been the kids that we've been interacting with.
Okay.
Um, yeah, in terms of a parenting style, it's interesting because I'm still so new to parenting in a way. So I feel like it's still definitely developing. Um, Definitely I looking through parenting through a trauma informed lens because in
Right.
foster care training, it's very trauma informed these days, which is great.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of times that looks a little different than traditional parenting. For example, a kid in your home might be, let's say, 17 years old,
Mm-hmm.
but in certain aspects, they might be 5 or 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or 42, we see with foster kids a lot of times because in some areas they're very, very developed as a way of
Right.
surviving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like you're not just parenting one age of a child.
That's so
And it can be
interesting.
hard. It can be hard to know in what moments to do what.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, sometimes when kids haven't had a lot of care, they encourage you to do things for them that isn't necessarily age appropriate. So maybe like plating a plate of food for a kid
Right.
or just other nurturing things to kind of
Mm-hmm.
try to let them know what that feels like. I don't think we can ever replace, right, what they
Yeah.
missed or totally heal something, but just to help a little bit in that way and support that and give them that chance to have that um age progression that they didn't get at that age.
Right. Right. That's a really good point. I wouldn't have thought of that side of things because, um, yeah, that some needs maybe have been met and some haven't, and
Mhm.
some, maybe if it's been pretty tumultuous lifestyle even, that would be yeah. You're kind of offering it appears to be that soft place to land, that place to go. Okay, here we can breathe, here we can, we care from our hearts, we care about what's going on, and not to saying parents weren't caring. I'm just saying in a
Mhm.
different situation because they're coming in at those kind of ages, having maybe not experienced much of that, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think it's hard because there's that balance of, well, with teenagers it's hard because
I think.
there's already an inherent push-pull dynamic, right?
Yes,
Of
I was going
like,
to say
yeah,
raising teens was hard, and they were mine.
right. They're never easy under any circumstances. But, sometimes teens in foster care really do want a family dynamic and they're like, yeah, I do want to be adopted. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they don't. They're like, you know what? I've been there, done that. Like, it's not uncommon for adoptions to fall through
Right.
or, them to suddenly have to leave someone's home. So, at some point they might just be like, you know what? I'd rather just do things on my own. So it's hard because, like, I think something that I learned is, a lot of times kids come in and they have an idea when they're teenagers, maybe of like what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're really right, and
Yeah.
in some aspects they can be really right. And it's good to give them that space to be like, hey, like, how can I help you support you in achieving your goals, right? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is it that you want out of this?
Right.
Because sometimes, there a lot of times, or sometimes I don't, maybe you shouldn't say a lot of times because I don't know, but sometimes
Right.
they're not looking for a parental figure, right?
Right. Right.
But they need a parental figure. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really weird kind of push pull because I feel like, yeah, you want to be that soft place for them to land, but also it's hard because, they're going to be out on their own in a few years. So
Mm-hmm.
encouraging them to be like, okay, like, let's get some life skills in place because the stats are so dire, right, of kids
Right.
aging out of foster care. An example of this is the placement that was in our home. We asked her, guardian ad litem is the term, but
Mm-hmm.
basically, so as a foster parent, you're not the legal guardian officially, but the
Oh,
guardian
okay.
ad litem is. So we have to go through them for a lot of things. So we said, hey, can we set her up a bank account, like under a bank account so she can start learning how to like, save money, use a debit card, all of that stuff. And she said, "Oh, I've never been asked that before." Okay, so she's been
Oh,
a guardian ad litem for several years at least, has
right.
multiple kids on her caseload. And I'm like, "You've never been asked this question?" So how many kids are aging out,
Oh my
not even having a
goodness.
bank account, not even having any financial literacy?
Right.
Um,
Wow.
it just blew my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we
Mm-hmm.
went to the bank, she got to like use a debit card for the first time. They showed her like,
Mm.
here's how you do the ATM. I was like, here's how you check your balance online. You always want to know what your balance is, all this stuff. But like, if she had to figure that out on top of everything else when she turns 18, it's
Sure.
just mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, but you're right. You're right. Like life skills and
Hmm.
things that there's maybe been so much going on that that's not a piece of that's yeah. You have to teach it, right? Like you
Right.
can't just you don't just happen. You don't just know. You might still think you just go knock on the door of the bank and can I have some money?
Right.
You
Right. Or
need to.
even not everyone's banked. Right. And I think
Right.
too, this is the other thing is like being a foster parent, you come into contact with people you never would maybe in your normal everyday
Right.
life, right? Because most people kind of tend to stay within their socioeconomic status,
Exactly.
maybe similar ethnicity a lot of the time
Mm-hmm.
too. But this you're getting into contact with all sorts of people. And so it really opened my eyes up to like, yeah, like not everyone is banked. Not everyone has a bank account or thinks that that's necessary if you're in survival mode day to day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or has the
Mm-hmm.
capacity to do that. So
Right.
yeah, it's just, yeah, opens your mind up, I think, to how many, many different people are living
Yes. Yeah. You're
and the
right.
different ways of doing that. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Alrighty. Can you share any pivotal moments, maybe with the last foster you had or one previously, where you um, chose to parent them differently to how you thought you would? Right. So maybe you sort
Mm-hmm.
of thought, oh, this is a good idea. This is what we need, boundaries, and we need this or whatever. And then somewhere in you went, got to switch this. This is coming from my own stuff and not
Mm-hmm.
actually for that child.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it was a huge learning curve.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
a huge learning curve. And I would say something, I guess I thought I would be a little more maybe like direct and than I ended up being. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I walked on eggshells a little more than I should have
Okay.
at the beginning. And what we learned too is my partner and I, what we learned too is like we needed well, probably more structure would be better
Oh,
than what
okay.
we were providing. Cause we were like, oh, we want to be really flexible to what the child's needs is like especially when older kids coming in like they have opinions about things like let's
Mm-hmm.
hear them out like let's kind of like
Right.
let this be pretty organic and I'll figure it out all together. And then we realized, you know what, maybe not, like maybe there are some hard things, and I think what
Right.
we learned is what we need for ourselves too.
Oh, good point.
Hmm.
Right.
So like
Right.
making that clear at the get-go, because as being a parent yourself, like when stuff starts going a certain way, then you're like swimming upstream
Yeah.
trying to like
Oh, yeah.
pull it, rein it back in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The boundaries, right? The
Right.
boundaries and the sort of like, okay, actually, these are my guidelines for me to be able to be enjoying life and living life and happy to come home, right?
Right. Right. And I think too, being a new parent, I didn't always listen to my gut because I was like, well, they always tell you, parenting kids that have experienced trauma is different than parenting kids who haven't. And,
Mm-hmm.
parenting kids that are biologically your own kids is different than kids that aren't.
Right.
So we relied on our team a lot, which was good. But like, I think we learned, we needed to rely a lot more on ourselves as the experts. Cause like at some point we had racked up way more hours than anyone else on the team. Right.
Right.
So with that child, so that's something we learned is like, a lot of times like we just need to go with our gut. And
Mm-hmm.
it's nice we can have that resource of the team, but sometimes they'll get it and sometimes they won't. And sometimes they really did help me have a new perspective that was super helpful. And I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But then I realized, I can feel that stuff in my gut. Like when someone's telling
Right.
me something like, is that actually true? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
not in terms of the situation? Because every kid's different. So
Yeah.
something that they offer, a piece of advice that might work for another kid, if in my gut, I'm like, we've tried that, I don't want to try it again. I need to say
Yes.
that and verbalize that and be a
Yeah.
little more
Yeah.
direct. So yeah, that's something I really learned is like, So now I've started doing that a lot more, is like just
Right.
listening to my gut and being like,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, like having more confidence, I think.
Yeah, I would think so, and I would think that's going to be over time, right? As you
Hmm.
build that, because you also, um, I'm sure you get information on each child before you get them, but again, it's just a sheet of like this. They
Right.
did this. They did this. It's not a human yet, right? It's not an
Right.
individual to really relate to. So I love that listening to, which I'm huge about with conscious parenting. This idea of like, okay, let me see what really feels right, because otherwise you're just constantly patching, right? Everywhere you go, you're just making patches, like little band-aids here and band-aids here, and you're running
Right.
around like on a crazy hamster wheel. When you go, okay, let me just trust, okay, this sits really well with me, and this not so much, right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you brought up too, like the Band-Aid visual,
Right.
because I think my biggest lesson too is like good at, and I knew this like on paper, but I didn't
Yeah.
like know this, like, I guess through my own experience, but like good intentions, right, don't always
Mm-hmm.
mean good results.
Right.
And with foster care
So
too, especially when it's with older kids, like that's so true. And
mm-hmm.
to be honest, like you're not going to have a completely positive impact on any kid, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
parent too, the same thing. They
Oh
take,
yeah.
some things are great, some things aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Kids react so differently to different things.
Yeah.
So that's something that, I'm really realizing. And yeah, and then in trusting my gut, hopefully, that will lead to, better
Right.
and better outcomes, especially over
Mm-hmm.
time as I'm gaining a lot of knowledge. But it's a very
Yeah.
humbling experience, I would say,
Oh, I
because,
think so.
you
Yeah.
try so hard and, you see what sticks and what doesn't stick. And, sometimes you might never see your results too.
Yeah. Like all those.
Sometimes it'll be years down the line. I've talked to a lot of foster moms who were like, it took years for us
Right.
to make breakthroughs and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. 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 Important things, like really important points, because of the dynamics and everything that you've got going on. That even as a mum of two, there's things that they will tell me a story of something that I said or did that I don't even
mm,
remember. Yet obviously I was there, but it'll be like, I can't believe you were so mean. You did, and you sort of be like, what? Oh my gosh, I don't even recall the conversation. So we all perceive things differently, right? What
mm-hmm.
something would be, really hurtful for them, I was thinking, but I was just telling you, get on with it or something. It wouldn't have been a big deal for me. So that's, yeah. And I had, my son's 23 now. I had 23 years of experience and still getting it wrong, right? That I think you're right with what you said. However, this idea that you do the best you can is fantastic, right? That's really all our only option is. We can get educated on stuff, we can learn more things, but that gut doesn't sort of lie, right? When we can get quiet enough to hear it.
Mm. Yeah, I love that you brought that up again too, of like, we do the best that we can. And I was talking to a foster care volunteer, and she said her goal with each kid is just to make a positive impact. And I thought, how beautiful is that? And she's like,
Mm.
anyone can make a positive impact on a child. And I think in foster parenting, sometimes what happens is there can be this idea that like, I need to save this child, I need to heal this child, right? That's what
Right.
success looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been, so important. And that's what we do on the podcast a lot too, is we call it the savior complex, that is so alive and
Yeah.
destructive in the foster care system in different ways. Is just like, what, at the end of the day, that like a more realistic and healthy
Right.
goal
I
is to
like that.
have a positive impact, because then you're not placing expectations to on a child. And how I view my foster parenting success too largely is just, how am I growing as a person?
Mm.
Because that's something I can control. I can't always
Right.
control, right, what the kids are doing or
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
situations, but I can control, and am I becoming better? Am I, facing hardships and not, not trying to sweep them under the rug,
Right. Right.
or obstacles, and being like, okay, how am I going to get through this and be a better person at the other side?
I love that. I love that. And that's so valuable, because many times we think we have to teach, and many times
Hmm.
really we just have to demonstrate it. We have to live. Like if you have somebody who sees you as like, I'm enjoying life, I'm kind to people, I'm compassionate to people, I, try my best, whatever it be, that's really the learning, right? As opposed to
Mm.
saying, no, we're going to be kind to everybody. And they're like, you're not. You're not so
No,
kind,
that's so
right?
true. It's so true. Actually, my mother-in-law, she had some great advice and she said, you know what? You just need to live your life. Just live your life and let them see you living your life.
Yeah.
Cause
It
like you're
sounds so
saying, like
simple,
that's,
doesn't it?
it
Yeah,
does
but
sound
it's
so
not.
simple,
Yeah.
but it isn't. Cause there's so many times you want to be like, why are you doing it this way? Why can't you do it this way? I know you're capable. Like,
Yeah.
stop dragging your feet. Yeah. But it's just like, yeah. And I think that's huge. And that says a lot to a kid. And that's how my partner and I look at it too, is like, we want our home to be an open home. We want it to be a
Mm.
safe place. Um, whenever we get a placement, it's like, we consider you family,
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens with the placement, right? Whether the kid is adopted or not, like, we don't care. We're like, our family is your family. That's
Nice.
something that's been huge too, is like, our family's embracing this and really coming around this
Right.
for us, so that they can maybe get a feel of what a different kind of family is like. Every family's different, and maybe they can take a
Mm-hmm.
few things with them when they create their own families.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you touched on a point that I used to worry with my guys that, like, my husband and I are very different and we're also different backgrounds. And I
Mm.
used to be really concerned about protecting them from my husband's side of the family, who are much more loud.
Mm.
I'm British and we're very, pulled together. Not anymore. Once you hit 50, forget all that. But before, it was very like always being polite. And I used to feel a bit like, oh, they're a bit rough. They're a bit right in there, full of love. So it's not one of those, it was a safe place to be. But I realized, even with my husband and I, how different we both are and how we parent very differently, that it's actually beneficial for the child, because the world is not perfect, right? And everybody is different in so many millions of layers of difference, right? And the benefit to the child is to realize, like, I can actually handle myself here, I can handle myself here. I know that this is okay. I don't like how this one shouts, or how this, that it's beneficial, because that's how real life is. I think if we keep them in a very protective bubble, which I really wanted to keep them in, it just wasn't realistic. There's a lot of learning. So I think when people would come, I'm thinking to come with you or these other great foster families you talk of, like you say, that one positive difference, just that one little bit that they can say, I've seen how it can be, right? I've seen how, oh, I saw how they talk to each other. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I saw, how they sort something out that's not going well. Those kind of things are huge, 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 huge. And we don't get it right, and that's okay too, you know.
No, yeah, I love that. And I think too, that so relates to having those polar opposites, and not that a bio family is necessarily polar opposite to a foster family, but um yeah, it's just so different and so positive, right?
Right.
Because, and I think too, like that also relates to foster kids of, some foster parents being like, oh, I need to like erase all the pain that they've had, which is impossible. But like, also like, what good is that? Right. Because, you know, that's a lot of the self work I had to do too before becoming a foster parent, is like working through the trauma that I have had in my own life. And a
Right.
kid feels that. A kid
Mm-hmm.
feels if you're just talking lip service, like, oh, you need to forgive people, but you haven't actually forgiven people in your own
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
Or, have you integrated really hard stuff that have happened to you into positive ways of being and relating to people in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just so huge that you're doing your own healing and growing.
Yeah, that's part of that raising each other that I really feel,
Hmm.
is so important. That's kind of really, and maybe that's, we could talk it from the mother standpoint, but even just in life, right? You know who you choose to hang out with, who your friends are, who your partner is, right? Like that there's this idea that, wow, we're all in it. Nobody knows it all. Nobody, right? We're all figuring out, and you probably, but you did speak on a bit, um, was realized how wise the kids are. They do know a lot about who they are, what they need, and this kind of idea. They if we can bring them to the table too, there's some help there, some healing, and to figure out a better way forward, maybe.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it really goes back to, right, that idea of like mutual transformation of like, my job as a foster parent isn't to like change this kid, right? My
Mm-hmm.
job is to grow as a person and be the best person that I can be for them. and hopefully help them grow to
Right.
their goals. But yeah, I love what you're saying, because I think that totally eliminates that savior complex piece of it, when it's like we're all in this together, we're all on this like level playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how can we all move forward in a way that's good and healthy for everybody?
Right. Right. Beautiful. Alrighty, so let's move on to how do you actually take care of you, Natasha, when to prepare for the transition of somebody coming in, or when they leave or have to move on or whatever. It's very well, it's not stable, obviously, the lifestyle you've chosen, your motherhood journey at this point, right? The
Right.
foster mom. So I'm just wondering, how do you take care of you, like your heart, your who you are?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like a lot of times there isn't a lot of preparation. So
Right.
sometimes you get, like the same day you'll get a call like, oh, can a kid come today?
Okay.
Stuff like that. And even when they leave, sometimes it is way planned out and a very slow transition. Sometimes it can be very, very fast. So
Okay.
there's always not a lot of planning you can do. But what's really helped me is I exercise really regularly, and it just
Okay.
is so great for my mental health. So I
Yes.
just always make that a priority. Like I am going to go to the gym, or I'm going
Right.
to go on a run, no matter
Yeah.
what,
Yeah. Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
happen, have stuff at home I can do in case I can't
Mm-hmm.
go to the gym. So that's been huge and really helps center me, and all
Yeah.
the nice adrenaline and other
Fantastic.
other good stuff.
Right.
Another thing is um we were really intentional about like building a strong support network. So my sister, who I mentioned before, who hosts the podcast with me, she's
Yeah.
a
I love
foster
that
care
you do that.
volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she kind of gets that world because she's involved in it.
Mm.
And so I can call her on the phone and I don't have to filter how frustrated I am, right? Or
Yeah.
like
Oh,
explain
we need
things,
those. Yes. We
right?
don't want to
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
pretty all the time. Yep.
Exactly. And she'll be like, she's so good at like seeing things from other people's perspectives and be like, okay, Natasha, take a step back. Here's
Right.
probably what this person is thinking,
Right.
or just, just empathizing with me and being like, that sucks. That's like really difficult,
Yeah. Sometimes you really just need that, don't you? Someone
Yes.
just to say, yeah,
Yes.
you're right. That's horrible.
Right. Like I'm not going crazy. It is hard. Yeah, exactly. And then basically my partner's whole family lives like really close to us. So like I'll go to Sunday dinner at their house, and it's just such
Mhm.
a safe place for me to come, show up again, like really unfiltered, and be like,
Right.
here's what's going on, here's where I'm at. I
Right.
don't have to put a pretty sugar coat on
Yeah.
anything. And to just have that like positivity and just
Mhm.
know that that's there, right?
Right.
Every
Right.
week.
Beautiful. Nice. Good. Good. And are you finding like when the transition of then the child leaving, you're sort of left almost with a bit of a hole or a bit of a gap for all
Yes.
your energy. So
Hmm.
is it sort of the same set up a little bit? Yeah, I guess it would
Yeah,
work
I
the
would say
same, right?
so.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because there's always a grief, right? Like
Yeah,
there's a
that's what I
grief
would think.
inherent in that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when there's a grief, a couple will polarize or go apart from each
Okay.
other. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, before this experience, I didn't understand how if people lost a child, they could get a divorce. I was like, that
Right.
doesn't make sense. Like, why does that, like, the divorce rate really jumps if you have a huge trauma?
Right.
And after being through this and, us having other losses, I'm like, it makes sense. Like, because,
Right.
you might think the other person isn't as sad as you if they display it differently. Or
Mm.
like when I am in grief, I want to be around people more and my partner wants to be around people less.
Oh,
So
those are good
that's
awarenesses.
interesting
Yes.
to know. And it's good we figured that out.
Yeah.
So I don't have to
Yeah.
take it personal, right? I don't have to take it personal. Um, so yes, it is like I think I try to place like a higher emphasis on self-care, and I know like, hey, I'm going to be want to be around people more. So how
Mm-hmm.
can I make that happen? Um
Okay.
yeah, definitely the exercising really helps with that too, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just creating some space for it and knowing like this is going to be hard for a while, I
Mm-hmm.
think is also really important too. And
Right.
it'll come in waves and you can't always predict
Sure.
when it'll come, but um yeah, I think just
Okay.
like knowing how my partner and I are going to react a little bit since we've
Mm-hmm.
been through multiple griefs is
Right.
helpful, and to remind
Mm-hmm.
myself of that too. Like,
Right.
okay, this is what this period looks like.
Right.
There'll be a time we
Sort
can
of.
come back together. But
Mm-hmm.
going to therapy is huge for me too. So I have a
Yeah.
therapist. I'm a huge
Fantastic.
advocate for mental health
Mm-hmm.
therapy.
Yes.
And then sometimes we go together as well
Mm-hmm.
when we feel like um, yeah, when we feel like maybe we're just having a block in our communication, we can't
Right. Yeah.
communicate,
Mm-hmm.
because that's sometimes so helpful. Just have a third party go, here's translate, right?
Yeah.
Between the two people, like, here's what she means, here's what he means.
Yes. Yeah.
Is huge. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
saved us a lot of time and arguments, just like
Yes.
figuring that out. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
another big
You
thing.
don't have to peel layers. Someone else is going to
Exactly.
say, "This is actually what I'm hearing," and they go, oh, I had no idea."
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Thank you, Natasha. So the very last question I ask everybody is sort of what's been the hardest part of your motherhood journey
Mm.
so far?
Yeah, I think it just is not what I expected it to be. Like I did want to start fostering before I became a parent myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a pregnancy loss before officially becoming a foster parent. We were on the tail end of our training. It was like a surprise pregnancy and then
Okay.
it ended and
I'm
yeah,
sorry
as a
to hear
loss.
that.
And so
Yeah.
that was really hard for me. And I noticed that it comes up in the fostering, like when we have to say goodbye to a kid, at the first, even when it was just like respite, I'd be like, oh my God, it was just
Right.
so hard for me. And then I realized, it's because I feel like, it reminds me of the other loss.
Oh,
And then while
yeah.
being a foster parent, I had another pregnancy loss and both of them were very like medically complicated. Um, the second one was just really, really hard physically. I had to have it like emergency
Right.
surgery. So, at this point in my life, I would have expected to maybe be in a little different place
Okay.
with my parenting journey.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is some beauty in realizing that, I consider myself a mother no matter what,
Mm.
having had the
Yeah.
losses, I consider myself still a mother.
I want you to
So,
fully feel yourself as a mother. You are mothering.
okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I know society doesn't always, it's just so weird views around miscarriage and pregnancy loss, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I kind of try to carry that with me, through this, but yeah, it has been very non-traditional, and but there is also like beauty in that, right? There's not one way to be a mother or
Yeah.
become a
Yeah.
mother.
Mm.
And, I've had some friends who've also experienced pregnancy losses and just being able to be there for them in that in a way I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have if I hadn't had it has also been really beautiful and reaffirmed for them too. Like,
Right.
like this is a loss, but there's also some beauty in it. I think that's huge and something that doesn't get talked about, I think, a lot.
No, no, I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. That's um, opens many doors for people to hear the journeys and how we all have so many different stories that lead us to this moment,
Mhm.
right? And to be open enough to say, "Hey, this is where I'm at. This is what's happening," and the story continues, right?
Right. Right. The story continues. I think that's also an important thing because there's low points in fostering, there's high points. I think
Mm-hmm.
fostering brings out the best and worst of humanity, both in the foster parents, because,
Right.
you can be really emotional about decisions that are being made by other
Sure.
people, in the
Oh, yeah.
case and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And of course, the parents whose kids are removed, like how difficult, I can't even imagine. So, brings out the best and worst of everyone, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of beauty still in it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your journey. And I'm super excited for all our viewers and listeners to go check Natasha out. We'll have all her links below. And, being a foster parent is a real journey. And I think what you're offering with your podcast and your company there is ways for people to be really have eyes open, right? And know where there's support and know, like you were saying before, maybe you can't be a foster family, but there are places. Did you want to talk on that a moment quickly? The volunteer.
sure,
Yes, that
sure.
would be great to share.
That'd be wonderful. Yes, a big emphasis of what we do is, let's let people know all the ways there are to get involved. They're so diverse. And so on our website, we have a blog post called like small and big ways, first steps, to getting involved in
Right.
foster care in
Mm-hmm.
smaller, big ways. So that's linked to different resources that people can check out. We also, through our organization, we're working on building out a resource database like I said, of
Yeah,
resources for foster care. And we're
right.
actually looking for volunteers who can help us from the comfort of their own home. It's totally
Mhm.
virtual. So if anyone's interested in that, they can check out our website, justaspecial.com. And there's links there to sign up to become a volunteer, request more interest about that.
Okay.
But yeah, there's so many different ways. So I just encourage people listening, if any of this resonated with you, yeah, just look into it a little bit.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.